Hello everyone! Just recently it was the 200th anniversary of the death of Jane Austen, and if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you can probably guess, or you know, that I am a big Jane Austen fan. Pride and Prejudice is among my top 2 books ever of all time, and I have a few items that are Jane Austen related. And recently on my Instagram I did a post of everything in my Jane Austen collection, and I thought it would be a good idea to do a video of this because I don't think I have before, and because I forgot a few items in my Instagram post. So this is really my entire Jane Austen collection. The first edition of Pride and Prejudice that I owned, I no longer have. It was a mass market paperback copy that I had for high school with tons of notes in it. And I can understand that some people would want to keep something like that so they can refer back to it, but I would prefer just a clean, nice book every time I read it. But I have had this bind up of Jane Austen's 7 novels for quite some time. This was a gift for either birthday or Christmas from one of my aunts, and it contains her 6 main novels as well as Lady Susan. And I have read this complete volume itself. I do also own individual copies of all of her books in this beautiful box set, which I believe is called the Heirloom Collection or the Heritage. I think it's Heirloom Collection. And basically it just has every book in this kind of format. Each has a really kind of lovely blue or purple or light yellow color to it, and a flower pattern right there on the front. And I've probably only read a couple of those editions. The only other one that I own a standard edition of is Sense and Sensibility. I got this at, I think, Hastings several years ago, and it was on sale. And it was just a lovely little copy, and I think I've seen other editions of books that have the same format, so the design isn't really unique to this book, but I thought it was so lovely that I had to buy it. I do own another copy of Pride and Prejudice, but it is the annotated edition, which is very big and very lovely, and I haven't yet read this one, so the next time I reread Pride and Prejudice, it will be this edition. And basically on each page it has the main text, and then it has the annotations with extra information on the sides. And it does also include some full color images as well. I also own a paperback edition of Lady Susan, the Watsons, and Sanditon, which I have read through. I don't really like the cover image, but it's a good one to have if you're a Jane Austen completist. I also own some copies of her early writings, her juvenilia, and one of those editions is volume the first in her own hand, so it's basically scans of the notebooks that she wrote in, so you can see exactly what it looked like to her as she was writing it. And my camera just overheated, but I was saying I didn't think it had a translation in text, but it does. It's just at the end and much more condensed, which makes sense. And it's basically the first notebook in which she contained her early writings. I also have this paperback of the juvenilia of Jane Austen and Charlotte Bronte, and honestly I can't remember if I have read this or not. It might contain some of the same stories as in volume the first. I haven't really checked to see that yet, and I'm pretty darn sure I haven't read the Charlotte Bronte half either. And I also have this book, which is technically called Two Histories of England by Jane Austen and Charles Dickens. And if I remember correctly, it's basically a combination of, or not combination, it's both of their writings as youth about the history of England, which they both wrote on, I think, as part of their early education. So it has Jane Austen on this side and Charles Dickens on this side. And I think I started to read this a long time ago, but I haven't actually read it. And then come my vintage editions of a couple Jane Austen books, and I have included these in a video before, but they are Mansfield Park. This beautiful edition is illustrated by Hugh Thompson, and on the inside it has a yellow peacock design, and the edges of the paper are shiny gold, and it does also have interior illustrations as well. I have not read through this volume, and I don't pick it up very often because it is very old. This edition was published in 1897 by Macmillan and Company Limited. Next is this edition of Emma, illustrated by Chris Hammond, published by George Allen. The end papers of this book are just a dark green color, and it has an inscription from 1898 as a Christmas gift to my dear wife from F.E.S. or L with much love. And it also has images on the inside and shiny gold papers. And I found out about those two editions of Jane Austen's book through Jane Austen Cover to Cover, 200 Years of Classic Covers, put together by Margaret C. Sullivan. And I loved reading this book so much. If you are a Jane Austen fan and are interested in the many editions her books have been published in, I highly recommend you find this book. Next are some of the spin-offs and alternate realities and continuations, etc. of Pride and Prejudice. The first one is just Jane Austen in general, not Pride and Prejudice, and that is Being Elizabeth Bennet, and it mixes in some other storylines of Jane Austen's books as well. Create your own Jane Austen adventure, and this was sent to me by a viewer who has her own channel. I'll leave a link down below if I can find it. And inside it had a copy of her receipt from the Jane Austen House Museum, which is now very faded. And this is definitely a very fun experience. Next is one that I forgot on my Instagram post, and that is Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. And I have not read this, but I have seen the movie, but I am sure I will read this at some point soon. Next is Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife, which was in one of my book hauls from a vacation a few years ago. This is by Linda Berdahl, and I haven't read this. I've heard it's pretty good, and I definitely intend to read it at some point, but I've had it for several years now. And lastly in that section is The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet. You probably know that there is a web series here on YouTube called The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet, or rather, The Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and this is the book version of the web series. So essentially, it's a novelization of a web series adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and I really love the web series. So if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. Next are some video adaptations of Jane Austen's works. And first up is, naturally, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries on DVD. This is a 5-disc set of all the episodes, and it contains some commentary and other little behind-the-scenes goodies, I think. Not all of which I have watched, but this was part of their Kickstarter campaign, so I had to get this level. And of course, there is the Pride and Prejudice version from 2005 with Keira Knightley, which I absolutely adore. It's one of my top 5 movies of all time. I have seen the BBC adaptation miniseries, but I don't own it, unfortunately, although I definitely want to. And lastly is not an adaptation of her work, but of her life, and that is Becoming Jane, starring Anne Hathaway as Jane Austen, and the beautiful James McAvoy as her love interest. I really like this movie as well. I've seen it a few times, which for me is a lot. And lastly are kind of some Jane Austen extras, one of which I am wearing right now. So hopefully you can kind of see that. Might be a little blurry. But I also have the t-shirt version because of course I do. It's purple and it's beautiful. I wear this t-shirt a lot during the summer because it has a very deep v-neck, and I wear the one I'm wearing right now in the winter a lot. And I'm kind of overheating right now wearing it. And both of those are from outofprintclothing.com, which I love. Also from Out of Print Clothing is this purple Pemberley pennant. It's got the little peacock logo and basically just made to look as if it's a college or something, but I hang this right above my bookcase and I really love it. And last but not least is the Jane A Day 5-year journal with 365 witticisms by Jane Austen. I've had this for more than a couple years, about 2.5 years actually, and it's been touch and go with how well I've been able to keep up with it, but lately I've been writing in it almost every day. And it's really interesting to see what I was doing a couple years ago on this day. And when I did the first year of this, I read all the quotes for Jane Austen and everything. Some are from her books, some are from her letters, and now I don't really pay attention to them anymore. I'm more focusing on what I wrote in it previously. But it's a really cute little edition, and if you're into journaling and that kind of thing, I recommend this. I don't really do a ton of journaling aside from this, but I like it. So that is my complete Jane Austen collection. I'm also a big Bronte fan, and I'm reading a biography of the Brontes right now, so you can probably expect a Bronte collection video in a few weeks from now. And with that, it's time to end this video. I'm overheating, my camera is overheating. Hopefully you're not overheating, but thank you for watching this video. Let me know what kind of Jane Austen stuff that you've collected over the years, and if there's anything I'm obviously missing, such as the BBC miniseries, obviously. And I hope you have a lovely day wherever you are. Bye!